Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Marcus Beer and today I'm going to talk about landlord insurance. I know landlord insurance or insurance in general is probably not most people's favorite topic, but when it comes to investing in property, you need to make sure that you understand your obligations and the best practice in terms of insurance cover that you need. Now, I should stress that I'm not an insurance broker and therefore I'm not allowed to give insurance advice. So please take this as just what it is. It is my experience and you should do your own research on top of this and possibly speak to your own insurance advisor. So let me fill you in. Let me tell you everything about landlord insurance. Landlord insurance is no legal requirement, but if you have a mortgage through which you have bought your property, then your mortgage lender will insist that you have landlord insurance. If you have self-financed your property, then you could get by without insuring it. But I would still strongly recommend to insure it because the costs that are associated with either damage to your property, contents, or any liability to your tenant can easily run into thousands of pounds, and I think you should be covered with an insurance cover for this. So let's start off with what is landlord insurance. So landlord insurance is basically an umbrella policy that covers you for what you typically would have with a buildings and contents insurance. But then in addition to that, you also have further elements. And they are basically associated with having somebody else live in your property. So it could either be that your tenants damage your property or that there is an accident through which your tenant has a claim and your insurance cover covers you for that as well. Also, there are additional products with landlord insurance that you can choose, such as a rent guarantee insurance, which is very good if your tenant doesn't pay their rent. Now, whilst I would stress that landlord insurance is not a legal requirement, I would recommend to anybody to have landlord insurance. Costs can quickly run into thousands of pounds. Think of a flood in your property, a damage via another property to yours, especially if it's a flat. Think about boiler breakdowns and your tenants might need to be rehomed. The heating breaks down, no hot water. All these issues can lead to quite dramatic costs. I remember one case where we had a flood in the property and the tenant had to be rehomed for 3 months into another property, whilst the property had to be refurbished. Now, that's a lot of costs, and you have to offer your tenant an equivalent property to the one they are in. So you can easily see that landlord insurance is crucial in those kind of scenarios. Very often you find that landlord insurance also includes legal cover and rent guarantee insurance. Now, the legal cover might be important for you if you incur legal costs. For example, you need to evict the tenants from your property and you don't manage this yourself, but you have a solicitor doing it for you, and that again can be quite costly. So having insurance cover to pay those legal bills is quite important. Additionally, rent guarantee insurance covers you when your tenants cannot or don't want to pay rent. Now, your insurance company will require you to have done credit and reference checks on your tenants, and only when those checks have been successful can you actually buy the product. So in a way, it also forces you to be quite thorough when you take on tenants, because you can't cut corners. You will simply not get the insurance cover that you want. Either way, those two elements are really quite important and are often in addition to the typical damage to the property and to the contents of your property. So you might be thinking, now, is landlord insurance actually more costly than normal contents and building insurance? And yes, I would say it is. In my experience, it's about 25% more expensive, and that's due to the nature of the insurance. Obviously, it covers not just the building and the content, it also covers the additional risks through having a tenant in your property. So for example, if there was a faulty device and your tenant has an electric shock through using this faulty device, then your insurance would cover you for that, and it's an additional risk that you would not have if you were simply living in the property yourself. So you can imagine that the additional risk needs to be paid for, and hence why landlord insurance is more expensive than normal building and contents insurance. Sometimes I get the question, do I need landlord insurance? I'm renting out my property to a friend or relative. And my answer will be very clear: yes, you should take out landlord insurance. First of all, your mortgage lender will not care whether you're letting it out to a friend, relative, or person that isn't known to you. So you're forced to have landlord insurance anyway. But even if you have self-financed your property, I would strongly recommend to have insurance. First of all, even if your friend is in the property or a relative and they have to be rehomed, so let's say there's a fire or a roof leak, they will have to pay for alternative accommodation, or you will have to pay for alternative accommodation. So it is absolutely a good idea to have cover in place for that. And then also there could be liability arising from an accident that happens in the property. So for example, a visitor to your tenant who is your friend or relative could have an accident. They could trip over a loose paving stone and have a fall and injure themselves and bring a claim against you. Again, your landlord insurance would cover you in those instances. That's why I think it's absolutely crucial, even if you have a friend or a relative living in your property, you should take out landlord insurance. Okay, next question up is, do I need landlord insurance if I live myself in the same property? And the scenario here is that you basically have a lodger in your property. I would say in general, yes, you need to have landlord insurance, but it's probably a more specific product. And in that case, I would ask my my insurance broker to look into it and advise which product you need. You should also check with your mortgage lender whether they allow you to have a lodger in your property. It's not such a common scenario, so I would say taking some advice from an insurance broker is definitely the right option here. So is buildings insurance included in this? Yes. It typically is, and you would have to exclude the building insurance element if you wanted it to be excluded. Now, there could be a scenario where you actually want this to happen, and this is if you have a property that is part of a larger block of flats where you typically have a factor, a property management company who looks after the whole company, so the whole property, and they will typically arrange buildings insurance on behalf of all the owners. You can imagine that if they insure the whole property, this is much cheaper, and in that case, don't insure or don't use the element of building insurance in your landlord insurance. You just simply have to tell your broker or your insurance company that you want the buildings insurance element removed. It should make it a bit cheaper as you're not paying for that element and you're still covered via your factor or management company. A number of landlords also take out rent guarantee insurance. It's basically an insurance product that covers you if your tenants don't pay. And as I've mentioned earlier, it really depends on having done some credit checks on your tenants. Your insurance company will basically stipulate in their terms and conditions that you must have done it. They have other conditions as well that you need to meet. And there is specific terms about when they start paying out, if your tenant doesn't pay, how long they pay out for, what you must have done in the meantime to notify your tenants that they are in arrears and how much you must have chased them. So it's quite important to look into the specifics of this policy. In terms of costs, it costs between £200 and £250 per year, so it's not a huge amount, and I find that if you have a tenant in there who's on a high rent, say £1,500, £200, £2,500, it is probably worth it because it gets difficult to forgo that rent coming in. But it's definitely not a must, and it's an option, and you should check out the specific conditions with your insurance company before taking out this additional cover. And so where do you go to get landlord insurance? Most insurance companies, especially those that already offer your buildings and contents insurance, have landlord specific products. You could just simply go to your company and say, I am now either letting out my property or I'm buying a property that I'm letting out. Can you please provide me with landlord insurance cover? It's probably also advisable to have a look at the quotes and see what they cost and how the offer differs between them. We found that Allen Boswell is a really good company. They've won lots of awards, and I have found their advice always very user-friendly, and they are particularly friendly and helpful when you ring them. But you could just go to one of your insurers that you already use, be it for your own property or for other parts. But yeah, we've certainly found that Allen Boswell is really good. I will of course also leave a link in the description so you can find them very easily. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I shall see you at the next video.